This is the 3 things that you must know to be certain that your products will sell. Now, I know when you're working a full-time job and you want to make a transition to having your own business, being an entrepreneur, having your own life of freedom and taking control of your economic future, really, the biggest concern that people have is anybody going to actually buy this stuff that I create and sell to them? And the answer is yes, absolutely they will, if you do it right. And there's ways to do it, a very specific way in which to do it, in fact, that we're going to talk about on this webinar today. And then at the end of the webinar, I'm going to give you some options for how you can learn more about this and take this to another level. But you're going to leave this webinar with a really clear idea of how to approach creating a business and how to approach creating a product that people are definitely going to want to buy. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that we just got to put on the table here is that starting a business doesn't it kind of feel like this sometimes? Like you're in this airplane and the way to start the business is to just sort of jump out of the plane and hope that everything works and hope that you make enough money and hope that you can make the transition successfully and hope that whatever your idea for a product is something that works and that people want to buy. And this all comes back to the whole core concept that you got bills, you need money. Your kids, if you have kids, they need to eat, and they probably want to eat every single day, maybe even multiple times a day. And you need some security. You need the security of knowing that there's going to be money coming in. You need to know that you're going to have the funds to pay the electric bill and all of that stuff. And then there's the big question that's in the back of everybody's mind when they start a business, and that is, what if it doesn't work? You know, what if it just doesn't pan out? What if this just doesn't work? And we're going to talk about how to get rid of that feeling of jumping out of a plane and that feeling of what's going to happen if this doesn't work, because we're going to make sure that it works. See, we think of entrepreneurship as taking a big risk. Now, you see here on the screen a picture of Richard Branson. Richard Branson is the ultimate risk taker. That's his thing. That's what he loves. That's what gets him excited every day, is doing big things and getting up and every single day and creating huge things and taking big risks in order to do that. Now, he also, in our world, has sort of become kind of like the face of entrepreneurship, right? When we think about business and we think about entrepreneurship, he has really stepped up and taken a leadership role in that arena. But I think that the real, while I personally admire greatly all the things that Richard Branson has done, and I think he's a great role model in a number of different ways, but the disservice that's done to us is that it's created the impression that that's what entrepreneurship always has to be about, right? When Richard Branson created Virgin Airlines, he sold Virgin Mobile and used practically every penny that he had to make the airline work. Now, that's huge. That's huge risk-taking, big stuff, and it doesn't have to be that way. Richard Branson is on the extreme end of the scale. There's a lot more people, and just like the people that I talk to every week, if you're a listener of the How to Quit Working show, normal people who've made normal transitions, more reasonable transitions. They didn't put everything on the line. Not that they didn't take risks, but they didn't put everything on the line, and they didn't jump off a cliff or jump out of an airplane to start their business. So it doesn't have to be like that. There is definitely another way. Now, the question that I want to ask is, what if you knew before you actually ever even thought about leaving your job, what people actually want? That people actually want what you have to offer. So you've got something and you know, before you even left your job, that they want it. And what if you knew before you ever even left your job how much they would pay for this thing that you have to offer? How would that make you feel? And finally, what if you actually had a group of people who were just dying to get this thing that you have to offer. All this before you even left your job. What if you had that? How cool would that be? How would that change things? How would that change your outlook? Would you feel better about quitting your job if you had that group of people that you know wanted something from you and you knew how much they were willing to pay and they already told you that they wanted it and you had their contact information? Would you worry less? Would you feel better about quitting your job? Would you sleep better? Would you walk into your job every single day knowing that there's an end in sight and knowing that it's just a matter of time before you make that transition, before you go out on your own and create that life of freedom that you want so badly? Well, you bet that would change things. Well, how do you do that? Let's get rid of this jumping out of an airplane concept and talk about a different way to think about it. So you have to shift the way that you think. Now, there's so much thought out there about a business being, it's a huge misconception that the way to successfully start a business is to get a brilliant idea. Get a brilliant idea and grab onto that idea and then jump out of that plane and hope that it works. So stop thinking about it as jumping out of the plane and start thinking about it as figuring out what in the heck the world wants from me and then creating and providing that. All right, so now we're going to dive right in to those first 3 things that you must know in order to be certain that your products sell every single time. Are you ready? I take that as a yes. All right, and just by the way, if you have your hand up or questions, I can't see the webinar thing where the questions pop up while the presentation is up. But we'll answer any questions that you have at the end. We'll have plenty of time for questions, and so don't worry about that. So just hang tight, and we'll get to your questions if you have them. So the first thing that you have to know, number 1, is it is not about the idea. Starting a successful business has absolutely nothing to do with ideas. You don't get ideas. You let people tell you what they want. So you let your potential customers give you the ideas. So start thinking, what I need here is some people to tell me what they want from me. Start thinking you need some people and stop thinking I need a brilliant idea, because you don't need a brilliant idea. I was actually talking with someone the other day, and it was so cool. We were discussing some consulting that I was going to do with him, and he said, "Well, this all sounds great, Jeff, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of business I would create. I don't have the idea. I don't know what people would pay me for." And my response was, "That's awesome. That's awesome. You're getting ready to go through the How to Quit Working program. That's what we're going to figure out. And if you don't think you're even ahead of the pack, right? Because you don't have preconceived notions to kind of cloud your mind and things to get attached to. So stop thinking that you need a brilliant idea and start thinking that what you need is some people to tell you what the idea is." All right, now I hit my slide button too fast. Okay, here we go. So the second thing that you need to know is start a conversation first. So the first thing that you do is start a conversation. So start this conversation with people who might be interested in what you have to offer. That's the first thing. So start thinking, I need to find some people and I need to start talking to them about what they want. And stop thinking, and this is the worst thing that you can think, is having a great idea and I think people will buy it. So I have this great idea and I really think people will love it. And this is the thing that I hear all the time, and it makes me shudder because people will say, I've got this great idea. I think it's a great idea. I think people are going to buy it. I think people would pay $75 for that. And I talk to my mom, and she thinks it's a great idea, and my sister thinks it's a great idea, and my best friend thinks it's a great idea, and I just think it's awesome. Well, it's probably not. Because here's the thing, no successful products are born out of brilliant ideas in people's heads. They're born out of conversations that you start with people. Now, if you're thinking, how do I start that conversation? We're going to talk a little bit about that. But got to stop thinking about the idea and start thinking about the conversation. And also stop thinking, I don't have an idea. Because if you don't have an idea, that's awesome. That's the best place to be in. The best place to be in is a place of not having an idea. Business is not about ideas. All right, so second thing, start a conversation first. And the third thing that you have got to know is it's not hard. This is not difficult. The problem is that some of the examples the media has given us and the way that we've come to look at entrepreneurship has made us think so extremely unfortunately that it's hard. And it's not. So all you got to do is start thinking, all I have to do is figure out what value I have to offer to the world and then deliver that. So when we think about entrepreneurship, we tend to think about numbers and business and marketing and all these deep, complicated things that just are confusing and overwhelming. But really, all you have to think about is just figuring out what value you have to offer the world and then delivering that to the world in exchange for money, of course. And that's not really so hard. Stop thinking business, marketing, and entrepreneurship and all that is so hard. Because it's not. In fact, if you look around, I bet that very quickly and very easily you would find very successful entrepreneurs who are not as smart as you are. Think about it. Think about it. Really look at successful entrepreneurs and look at, wow, how are they different than me? How are they really different than me? And don't look at the things that they have. Don't look at the money that they have. Don't look at the staff that they have. Don't look at the resources, their office space or their building or their connections or their products or their services. Don't look at any of that stuff. Look at the person and look at how is that person really different than me? And what you'll find is that, well, probably they just think a little bit differently. And actually in the How to Quit Working program, that's one of the biggest things that we focus on is how do really successful people think differently? And how are they really different than all of the extremely smart and talented people out there who just haven't quite gotten to the point where they have the things that they want yet? All right, so finally, third thing is it's not hard. Start thinking, all I got to do is figure out what value I have to offer the world and then just deliver that. And stop thinking that business, marketing, and entrepreneurship is hard, because it's not. So, that's it. So to summarize those three things, the first thing you got to remember is it is not about the idea. Start a conversation first, and always remember it is not hard. It is not hard. So start a conversation. Start a conversation with all these people. Now, that's the biggest question that I get is like, okay, Jeff, this is great. You say start a conversation, find out what people want, blah, blah, blah. Well, how the hell do I do that? Okay, well, that's what we're going to talk about now. I'm going to start talking about having a conversation with lots and lots of people. That's why I show the stadium full of people here, because you got all these people. Think of yourself as being on the field. You got all these people who are looking down at you and saying, I want this thing. Well, how did you know what that thing is that they want? How did you start that conversation? Start by asking yourself this question. Now, when I say figure out what value you can provide to the world, just because you can provide some value to the world doesn't mean you should. Okay? So start with something that you really care about. Now, when I made my transition from working full-time to having my own business, I had been managing large technology programs for a number of years. I could have gone into technology consulting, but that's not what I wanted to do. I was actually really kind of tired of that. I didn't really care that much about it. I just had stumbled into that career in the late 90s because it paid well. But I could have gone that way, And I had the connections and the credibility that I really could have built a business pretty quickly that way. But it's not the way I want. It's not the way that I wanted to go. So I wanted to go in a completely different direction. So this is why you want to ask yourself the question of what is the value that you have to offer to the world? So what is it that you have, that you know, that you can do, that can transform other people's lives in a positive way? Ask yourself that question. Now, if you're wondering, well, how do I know that? Ask yourself this question. When people call me up and they say, or when people call you up and they say, so-and-so, can you help me with this? George, can you help me with that? George, can you take a look at this? Susan, can you tell me what you think about that? When your friends and family call you up and ask you those questions, what are they asking you about? That's a really good starting place for figuring out what value you have to offer the world. Now, if you're here, most people, by the time they get to this point, if they sign up for a webinar like this, they kind of have an idea of what it is that they have to offer the world. But start by thinking about what is the value that you can offer to the world? How can you transform people's lives? How can you make people's lives better? And do that with something that you really care about. Number 2, find the people who want that. So where can you find the people who are interested in that transformation? Now, if the value that you have to offer to the world is, for example, a better way to organize your restaurant business, so a better way to keep track of inventory and handle the staffing, and you have this great way to completely transform restaurant businesses and take stressed out, overwhelmed restaurant owners and make them more profitable and give them more time off and make them enjoy their restaurant more. And that's the value that you have. Then you need to find the people who want that. Well, who might want that? Well, probably restaurant owners. Does that make sense? I think that makes a lot of sense. So then you would find restaurant owners and then finally start talking with them and find out what it is that they want, right? So specifically, what is it they would want in that situation? And what we're going to find out here is now you have a general concept, right, that you're able to help restaurant owners to put in place better systems to organize and manage their restaurants, but you got to start that conversation with them and find out what they want, right? So your idea might be to provide a 1,500-page process manual to them. Well, the restaurant owners might say, I don't have one bit of time to go through that 1,500-page manual. I actually need that synthesized down into a much more streamlined process, and I need to have that shown to me in this way. And maybe they even say, well, I need somebody to come in here and actually help me put it in place. So again, you have a concept of, well, I've got a better way for you to organize your restaurant, but you got to have that conversation with those owners to find out how they want that, right? Because you could have, in the case if your idea is to provide that 1,500-page binder and process and procedure manual, well, that's not something that the restaurant owner would be interested in or want to consume because it just doesn't work for them, right? So when you have that conversation, you'll find out what they want and, just as importantly, how they want it. The only other thing that I would add there is that is how do you find the people, right? So that's another question that I get a lot, and it really is so easy these days, and that's what is so fun about this world in which we're operating today, is that we have so many opportunities and so many ways to go out and find the people that we want. For example, if I don't do any work with restaurant owners, but if I were looking for restaurant owners, I think I would start by finding local trade associations or local groups. I know that there are at least a couple of regional organizations around here for restaurant owners and restaurant owner associations. If the value that you offer the world is a better way to raise your children in a way that makes them makes you have a better relationship with them and makes them better behaved and more calm, then the people that want that would be parents, no doubt, and then you would start to look for parenting groups, right? So parenting groups online or local parenting clubs, or maybe you work with daycare providers or anything like that, any way to get access to those people. So the online world is a huge resource for getting connected with different people and different types of people who have similar interests and are looking for the same types of things. So the online world is great, but also I always tell people, don't forget your local region and all the things and people that you have and ways that you have of connecting with people, maybe even in person in your local area. So figure out what value you have to offer the world. Find the people who want that. And then finally start talking to them, find out what they want and how they want it.